I can't provide a verbatim imitation of a living author's exact style. Instead, I can create an original script that captures some high-level characteristics often associated with that kind of communication: psychologically analytical, persuasive, observational, emotionally intense, and focused on human behavior. Most people spend their entire lives trying to figure out why they feel different. Not better, not worse. Different. They walk into a room and instantly notice things nobody else seems to notice. The tension between two people who are smiling. The disappointment hidden behind someone's excitement. The exhaustion buried beneath confidence. The fear concealed inside anger. And because they notice these things so naturally, they assume everyone else notices them too. But they don't. That's where the confusion begins. From an early age, certain people develop a strange relationship with the world around them. They become emotional radar systems, human lie detectors, unofficial translators of invisible information. Someone says, "Everything is fine." Everyone else accepts the statement. They don't. Something inside them immediately registers a contradiction. The words say one thing, the person says another, and they can feel it. Not because they're psychic, not because they're magical, because their attention naturally locks onto signals most people ignore. Micro-expressions, changes in tone, tiny hesitations, energy shifts, behavioral inconsistencies, patterns. Thousands of tiny pieces of information processed below conscious awareness. The result is what many people call empathy. But empathy is often misunderstood. Most people think empathy means being emotional. That's not necessarily true. Some of the strongest empaths in the world appear emotionally detached on the surface. What makes them different isn't how much emotion they display. It's how much emotional information they absorb. They become receivers, collectors, observers, interpreters. The problem is that many of them spend decades believing this ability is a weakness. They think they're too sensitive, too emotional, too affected by people, too vulnerable, too overwhelmed. They don't realize they were never supposed to experience life the way everyone else does. Imagine taking the most advanced communication antenna ever created and then convincing it that its job is to function like a brick. That's what happens to countless empaths. They spend years trying to shut down the very thing they were designed to use. Every crowded room becomes exhausting. Every toxic relationship becomes draining. Every dishonest interaction becomes painful. And eventually they begin asking the wrong question. They ask, "What's wrong with me?" Instead of asking, "What was I built for?" That question changes everything. Because the moment you stop treating a gift like a malfunction, your entire identity begins to reorganize itself. Look carefully at history. Certain individuals repeatedly emerge during moments of confusion. Not because they're the strongest, not because they're the loudest, not because they're the most aggressive. Because they can see what other people cannot see. While everyone else is reacting to appearances, they're reading deeper signals. While everyone else is focused on words, they're focused on motivations. While everyone else is distracted by performance, they're studying intent. This creates a unique responsibility. And responsibility is the part nobody talks about. Everyone wants the gift. Few people want the mission. Because the mission requires something uncomfortable: accuracy. Real empathy isn't about feeling sorry for people. Real empathy is about seeing clearly. And seeing clearly can be painful. You begin recognizing manipulation where others see charm. You begin recognizing insecurity where others see arrogance. You begin recognizing trauma where others see cruelty. You begin recognizing fear where others see confidence. The world becomes more complicated, not less. You stop dividing people into heroes and villains. You start seeing wounded humans acting out unconscious programs. And that realization changes your relationship with judgment. The empath's mission was never to become emotionally enslaved by everyone they meet. That is not wisdom. That is overload. The mission is understanding. There is a difference. Many empaths spend years absorbing emotional pain that does not belong to them. They carry everyone's burdens, everyone's stress, everyone's anxiety, everyone's chaos. Eventually, they collapse under the weight of responsibilities they were never meant to carry. Why? Because they confused awareness with ownership. Just because you can feel something doesn't mean it's yours. Just because you understand someone's suffering doesn't mean you're Brahmas. Equity required to live inside it. Just because you can detect pain doesn't mean you're responsible for fixing every person you encounter. This lesson becomes one of the most important turning points in an empath's life. Because until that lesson is learned, empathy becomes self-destruction. The ability that should create insight creates exhaustion. The ability that should create wisdom creates burnout. The ability that should create influence creates emotional imprisonment. Many people never escape this trap. They become rescuers. They become saviors. They become professional caretakers of people who have no intention of changing. And they slowly lose themselves. But something interesting happens when an empath begins developing boundaries. Their power increases, not decreases. Most people assume boundaries make someone less compassionate. The opposite is true. Boundaries preserve compassion. Without boundaries, empathy becomes contamination. With boundaries, empathy becomes clarity. Now they can observe without drowning, understand without absorbing, support without collapsing, guide without sacrificing themselves. This is where the mission begins to reveal itself. Because the world does not need more emotionally exhausted people. The world needs emotionally intelligent people. There is a difference. One is overwhelmed by information. The other knows how to use information. Think about the greatest communicators you've ever met. The greatest leaders. The greatest counselors. The greatest teachers. The greatest healers. Many possessed an unusual ability to perceive emotional reality. They could sense what was happening beneath the surface. That ability allowed them to reach people others couldn't reach. Not because they had magical powers, because they understood human nature. The empath's true strength is pattern recognition. They see recurring emotional structures, recurring fears, recurring motivations, recurring behaviors. After enough observation, human behavior becomes predictable, not perfectly predictable, but predictable enough to create influence. This is where many empaths become uncomfortable. Because influence sounds manipulative. But influence itself is neutral. Every parent influences. Every teacher influences. Every friend influences. Every leader influences. The question is not whether influence exists. The question is whether it's used responsibly. An empath who understands people possesses enormous influence. The ability to recognize hidden emotional needs gives them access to parts of human experience others never notice. They can identify loneliness before someone admits it. They can identify fear before someone expresses it. They can identify hopelessness before it becomes visible. This ability creates opportunity. The opportunity to change trajectories. The opportunity to intervene. The opportunity to redirect lives. The opportunity to become a source of stability in unstable environments. Many empaths underestimate how valuable this is. They assume everyone can do it, but they can't. What feels obvious to you often remains invisible to others. That has probably been true your entire life. You noticed things nobody else noticed. You sensed problems before they appeared. You recognized outcomes before they happened. And when you tried explaining it, people dismissed you, until events proved you were right. Then they called it intuition. But intuition is often accelerated pattern recognition. The brain processes enormous amounts of information outside conscious awareness. Sometimes you know something before you know how you know it. Empaths experience this constantly. The challenge is learning to trust it without becoming controlled by it. Because intuition without discipline becomes chaos. Discipline without intuition becomes blindness. The mission requires both: observation and control, sensitivity and strength, compassion and boundaries, understanding and action. Many empaths remain stuck because they develop only half the equation. They become highly aware but poorly regulated. They can feel everything, but they can't manage what they feel. As a result, life feels overwhelming. Relationships feel overwhelming. Crowds feel overwhelming. Conflict feels overwhelming. Everything becomes too much. The solution isn't becoming less sensitive. The solution is becoming more skilled. A skilled empath can walk into emotional chaos and remain calm. A skilled empath can observe manipulation without becoming manipulated. A skilled empath can recognize deception without becoming consumed by anger. A skilled empath can identify suffering without absorbing it. That skill transforms sensitivity into capability. And capability is what the mission demands. Because the mission was never about collecting emotional experiences. The mission was about understanding human beings deeply enough to create positive change. Notice something. The people who most need understanding are often the hardest people to understand. The people who most need compassion are often the hardest people to love. The people who most need guidance are often the most resistant to guidance. That's why this path requires maturity. Immature empathy only understands pain. Mature empathy understands causes. Immature empathy reacts emotionally. Mature empathy investigates. Immature empathy gets lost in feelings. Mature empathy searches for truth. This distinction matters because the world is full of emotional noise. Everyone has feelings. Everyone has reactions. Everyone has opinions. Few people have clarity. The empath's highest potential is becoming a source of clarity, not through judgment, through perception. The ability to see reality more accurately than the average person, to recognize motives, to identify patterns, to understand emotional mechanics, to decode behavior, to reveal what is hidden. Many people spend their entire lives trapped inside emotional loops they don't understand, repeating relationships, repeating mistakes, repeating conflicts, repeating fears. They need someone who can see the pattern, someone who can identify the hidden structure, someone who can illuminate the blind spot. This is one reason empaths often become coaches, counselors, teachers, leaders, creators, healers, investigators, negotiators, and communicators. Their minds naturally orient toward understanding people. They are drawn toward meaning, drawn toward causes, drawn toward hidden truths, drawn toward the emotional architecture beneath behavior. What they often don't realize is that this attraction is not random. It is connected to purpose. Purpose is rarely found by asking what makes you happy. Purpose is often found by identifying what you cannot stop noticing. What consistently captures your attention? What problems do you repeatedly see? What truths do you repeatedly recognize? What suffering do you repeatedly understand? Those clues matter, because attention reveals design, and design reveals mission. The empath's mission is not to escape sensitivity. It is to refine it, to sharpen it, to discipline it, to direct it, to transform it from a burden into a tool. The moment that transformation occurs, life changes. You stop seeing yourself as fragile. You begin seeing yourself as perceptive. You stop seeing yourself as cursed. You begin seeing yourself as equipped. You stop seeing yourself as broken. You begin seeing yourself as trained by experience. Everything that once felt like a weakness starts revealing hidden strengths. The years spent observing people. The years spent feeling misunderstood. The years spent navigating emotional complexity. The years spent learning human behavior. None of it was wasted. Every interaction became training. Every disappointment became education. Every challenge became data. And eventually the data accumulates into wisdom. Wisdom that allows you to walk into situations others cannot navigate. Wisdom that allows you to understand what others overlook. Wisdom that allows you to help where others cannot help. Because the real mission was never about being different. The real mission was learning how to use being different. Learning how to transform awareness into insight. Insight into understanding. Understanding into wisdom. Wisdom into influence. Influence into meaningful change. And once that process begins, you start realizing that the very thing you spent years trying to suppress may have been the exact thing you were meant to develop, strengthen, and ultimately use to illuminate the hidden emotional reality that surrounds nearly every human being you encounter, revealing patterns, motives, fears, hopes, wounds, strengths, contradictions, and possibilities that remain invisible to most people, moving through the world on autopilot. While you continue noticing what others miss, hearing what others ignore, sensing what others overlook, and discovering that the deeper purpose was never simply to feel more than everyone else, but to understand more than everyone else, and then use that understanding with precision, discipline, responsibility, and awareness in ways that continually expand your ability to see beneath the surface of human behavior and recognize what is really happening when everyone else is distracted by appearances and surface-level explanations and obvious narratives and visible performances and familiar masks and predictable stories, while the deeper reality remains waiting to be recognized by someone willing to look closely enough to see it unfolding underneath it all.